I've traveled around the world and seen a few different kinds of cooperatives. China peasant co-ops, same in Cuba, rural co-ops. Mondragon, more recently I went there and studied it more deeply. There's a book up here on it that I've written. I pulled together some of my stuff and writings on Marx and Peter for find them in there. But what I want to do today is talk about the U.S. We actually have an interesting history. I grew up in a valley near Pittsburgh, Ohio Valley, and all the little towns going down the river from Ohio, from Pittsburgh, are named Economy, Harmony, Freedom, Unity, Industry. They're named after virtues, because the founders were all the guys that Marx and Engels were polemicizing against when they wrote Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific. They were all, the little towns were founded by different utopian socialist co-ops, mostly religious. Some of them fell apart for obvious reasons. They didn't believe in reproducing. They thought the end of the world was going to come. Robert Owen started one in New Harmony, Indiana. It lasted longer. And for now, most of these are open-air museums. They failed for the reasons that Marx and Engels, when they wrote their critique of utopian socialism. Others came along later and survived. Some of them to this day. If you were from the Midwest, you know, drive across the prairie, come to a little town, see a big sign that says Co-op. It's the gas station, it's the grain elevator, farmers come to the prairie farm. Or throughout the Midwest, you go to the grocery store, Hy-Vee, 25,000 workers in the Hy-Vee chain. It's all worker-owned cooperative. The original guy who owned the first two Hy-Vee stores was a German socialist. When he died, passed it on to the workers. They spread it. So the Hy-Vee supermarket chain is entirely worker-owned co-op. In Pittsburgh, we have a town called Vandergrift. The whole town from 1920 to 1955 was owned by the workers, and they owned the steel mill in it too. But finally, the competition in steel in the mid-50s, after 30 years of making a profit, living for workers there, it went under. Plywood. Before the Second World War, all the plywood produced in the United States was produced by cooperatives in the Pacific Northwest. They eventually got put out of business after the war when the government, state governments in the South subsidized cheaper type of pine trees to make hardwood out of, and they couldn't compete. They also had a weakness in that they were absolutely equalitarian. Everybody got exactly the same wage. They skilled, unskilled, whatever. It was absolutely, except for the women they hired to keep the books. They had to pay them more. But the U.S. has all these interesting history, and it's still ongoing. There's still new co-ops being formed. There are about 400 of them, I think somebody mentioned. But if you look at it in terms of the ESOPs, Employee Stock Ownership Plan, they're much larger. There's 13,500 ESOPs in the country, with a left wing, a center, and a right wing. The right wings being basically rip-off instruments to fleece the workers of their savings, and the left wing of them looking a lot like worker co-ops, do practice of economic democracy. So the ESOPs are a terrain of struggle. But the one I want to talk about that I know most intimately is in Chicago, and how I first learned about Mondragon and cooperatives, and how the first thing came into my consciousness. There was a factory, a number of inspired European called Stuart Warner, produced a lot of mobility parts for autos a long time. Had 5,000 workers max. At a certain point, it was down to about just under 2,000 workers. They decided to go south to get away from the union. And so we waged a big campaign, Coalition to Save Stuart Warner, and got everybody involved, the workers for it. The idea was that we were going to buy out Stuart Warner rather than let them go away. So we mobilized not only the workers, the community, the churches. We got a majority of the city council. We got the banks. We even got the mayor to agree to do eminent domain. The whole thing was all set. But at the last minute, what happened? United Electrical Workers, UE, the union, said no and pulled out. And the reason, we do not want to run capitalism better than the capitalists. Now the interesting thing is, it's the same union, including almost half of the same leadership, that is now involved in the Republic Windows. So they've learned a few things over the years. First of all, they learned at least try to get another capitalist to buy it out rather than just let it go. Mr. Warner, they just let it go. They tried to get the workers a good severance pay. That was their demand, severance pay. But now, for the second time around, we'll see whether the UE is going to come around to the idea that this is a point of struggle. So that's the main point I want to make. To me, worker cooperatives are a weapon of struggle, a weapon of class struggle. I don't think we'll get socialism by having worker co-ops, multiply like mushrooms after the rain. I don't think it's going to happen that way. But I do think that worker co-ops are one arrow in our quiver that we use to battle for socialism, to wage the war of position, to secure strong points for the working class. Along with others, we need our own political instruments. We need our community organizations. We need our trade unions. And along with that, we can contend with the work. We can contend with our class adversaries in the political sphere. We can contend with them in the cultural sphere. Why not also contend with them in the economic sphere? And that's where worker cooperatives fit in. They are a school of workers mastering society. If you can run your own factory, why can't you run your own neighborhood? If you can run your own neighborhood, why can't you run your own city? If you can run your own city, why can't you run your own state? If you can run your own state, why not your own country? Why not? Can't the working class be masters of the world? So that's what comes out of the school, that running a cooperative has the kind of consciousness that begins to develop when workers become masters. Obviously, they have to do it in tough terrain. They have to compete in the market with other capitalists. I think the key lessons that come out of the Mondragon experience is that a factory alone doesn't work. What made Mondragon thrive and survive for 50 years and continue to grow in strength and quality is that there's a 3-in-1 combination. It's not enough to own the factory. You have to own a bank, a credit union. Even Mondragon started with a very small credit union, now has one of the largest banks in Europe, Caja 4.2 billion euros in assets, 1.2 million customers. But it's entirely worker-owned. Half of the owners are the tellers, the guy who sweeps the floor, as well as the bank manager. And the other half of it is owned by the industrial co-ops that belong to Mondragon. The bank is their way of seizing and controlling their surplus value so that they can deploy it in the way that it's in their interest. There's no outside element, not one person in Mondragon who doesn't work there that has a share or who has a claim on their surplus value. One exception being the Spanish state, they have to pay taxes. They get a tax break if they give 10% to local schools and neighborhoods and parks and so on. That's cool. But otherwise, they have total control over the surplus value. Which is why you can, well, if you can hang around here, I'll go into it in depth in the next lesson on Mondragon. But the main point I want to leave you with is that we have to find the forms of struggle where we can contend, not only in the political sphere, not only in the cultural sphere, but also in the economic sphere. And those forms of struggle are work co-ops in the other aspects of the solidarity economy network, the solidarity economy.
Go ahead.
You said that there were three keys. One was it's not enough to own the factory, but to own the banks. That's 1 and 2. Factory, bank. Third.
Oh, third one's schools. Schools.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Source of innovation and new ideas.
Didn't they also start doing some of the support things like healthcare, like clinics? Didn't they also start?
Yes, they ended up with their own welfare system, right.
I have one question. The groceries in Europe, they got wage workers over there. I love Monterey, but I mean, in point of fact, yeah.
They're transitioning them. They bought them up all at once because they wanted to block Walmart from coming into Spain. So they were cash rich at the time, so they bought up every convenience store, every supermarket, every mom and pop grocery, every big market that they could. They bought up 200 of them all at once, and so they gradually are transitioning them to worker ownership. They're about 45% of the way through that transition.
Okay, already, yeah, because that concerned me that you don't have to lose things all the time.
And they're also consumer owned. The grocery stores are also consumers own a piece of them.